As I woke, the stale odour of sweat and old circuit boards pricked my nose. A single fluorescent bulb flickered above, throwing an anemic yellow glow on the peeling paint, and rusted metal cages lined the room. I sat up with a gasp, fingers scrambling on the damp sheets. They came away smeared with a rusty red. It had to be blood, not mine. Whose then? I had no idea. It was the usual. Wake up, mystery bruises, mystery blood, and a gaping hole where my life should have been. I closed my eyes and pressed my fingers against my temples. Nothing. Blank. That was my curse. No memories, no past. Just a body that got scraped, stabbed and thrown around too often. I was a ghost in a body. A cipher that existed at the whim of a cruel city, and its even crueler trade. The city was called Haven, but it was everything except. Buildings rose like broken teeth, metal and rust, choking out the last dregs of the sky. And coursing through its veins, the reason I was here at all, memories. In Haven, your memories weren't just relics in your head. They were coin, power, and life extension in one. The rich and powerful lived long, their days fattened by other people's pasts. Doctors traded skills, artists their inspirations, soldiers their traumas. And scroungers like me, we sold the pain, the fear, the dirty little secrets others wanted gone. It was a twisted place, but it was the only life I could remember, which really wasn't saying much, considering I barely remembered yesterday. Still, I had a job to do for a man named Thorn, a memory broker with snake eyes and a smile like shattered glass. He had some big buyer with a taste for heartbreak, and I was just the unlucky sap tasked with tracking that misery down. I swung my legs over the cot, wincing. My body screamed in protest. Thorn liked to remind his stock who was in charge. I stumbled out into the alleyway behind Thorn's shop, the stench of rotting garbage making my stomach turn. Haven was always worse by day, a swarm of desperate faces and grasping hands. I kept close to the shadows, eyes peeled, a worn knife clutched in my palm. Thorn's description was vague. A woman, young, a heartbreak so profound it would fetch top price. Where do you even start with a search like that? A scream pierced the air, a chilling sound in the usual hum of misery. I bolted down the alley, instincts taking over. A figure lay crumpled near a pile of trash bins, thin arms wrapped protectively over their head. "Leave her!" I yelled, trying to sound tougher than I felt. 3 rough-looking citizens looked at each other with a mix of surprise and annoyance. One of them, a gangly-looking woman smelling of cheap booze, spat on the ground. "Scram, Null! This isn't none of your business." Null, the city's name for people like me, the wiped clean. That familiar mix of anger and helplessness boiled in my gut. Thorn wouldn't be happy if I came back empty-handed, and I wasn't eager for another beating. "I got credits," I blurted out, hating myself even as I said it. "Good credits. Just let her be." They all looked at each other, and then one of them, a scrawny rat-faced one, chuckled as he rasped, "We'll take your credits and the woman's memories. I bet they're worth a fair amount of credits." He lunged at the woman. Before I could think, I was on him. My knife sang through the air, slashing across his arm. He yelped in surprise, but his buddies had recovered. I was outnumbered, out-muscled, and my head was already throbbing. This was spectacularly stupid. Suddenly, the woman sat up, her face streaked with tears. But they weren't the defeated tears I expected. Her eyes burned with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. "Get away from me." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it cracked like a whip. The thugs froze. The gangly woman laughed nervously. "You hear the lady, boys? Guess we'll find our fun elsewhere." I watched, stunned, as they shuffled off. My arm ached. and I was pretty sure I was bleeding again, but my brain couldn't process what just happened. "Are you all right?" I asked the woman, unsure why I hadn't run off with the others. She wiped her face, revealing deep, violet eyes that seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 storms. "Thank you," she said quietly. Then she did the unexpected. She smiled. A tiny, sad smile, but a smile nonetheless. "You're looking for someone, aren't you?" Her voice held a trace of a melody I couldn't place. Someone heartbroken. How did she know that? My breath hitched. "How did you—" The woman shrugged, a flicker of something old and knowing in her eyes. "Let's just say I know a thing or two about heartbreak. Maybe I can help you with your job." Her words hung in the grimy air, loaded with unspoken promises. Despite every warning bell ringing in my head, the desperation clawed at me. Thorn would have my hide if I returned with nothing. And this woman, there was an odd power buzzing just beneath the surface, whispering of a different kind of memory trade. "Fine," I managed to croak. It was a decision born of both desperation and a strange curiosity I couldn't shake. "What's your name?" "Call me Lyra," she said, her smile widening. It wasn't a friendly smile, more like the baring of teeth. It sent a delicious thrill of unease down my spine. Lyra led me through a labyrinth of back streets I'd never dared to explore. We moved in silence, a ghost and a woman with 2 bright eyes, the thrum of Haven fading the deeper we went. Finally, we reached a crumbling structure, once a grand mansion, now consumed by ivy and neglect. "We're here." Lyra's voice was barely a murmur. "The House of Echoes, they call it." "Echoes?" I repeated back, the word tasting strange on my tongue. She didn't answer. Instead, she pushed open the rusted iron gate. Inside, the garden was a riot of overgrown weeds and twisted trees. In the centre of it all, a lone fountain stood silent, its basin long dry. Lyra approached it cautiously, as if expecting something to leap out. Then, she placed her hand on the cracked stone rim. A shudder ran through her body, and a ripple spread across the fountain's dusty surface. Suddenly, the air vibrated with sound. Whispers, laughter, sobs. They swirled around us, 1,000 voices layered into a cacophony of emotion. I stumbled back, overwhelmed. "These are echoes," Lyra explained, her voice strained. "Fragments of memories, heartbeats left behind." She closed her eyes, focusing. The murmur of voices intensified, then abruptly coalesced into a single, anguished cry, a woman's voice, choked with a grief so raw it clawed at my insides. "Here!" Lyra gasped, opening her eyes. "This is what you seek." I stared at her in disbelief. Could it be this easy? I listened hard, trying to identify anything useful amidst the torrent of pain. But it was no good, just pure, unfiltered emotion. It was worthless, worthless to me. My shoulders slumped. Another dead end. Thorn wasn't going to be pleased. As if sensing my despair, Lyra tilted her head. "Perhaps you're looking at this incorrectly," she said softly. "Memories aren't just pictures and words. They are sensations. Can you feel it? The shape of her sorrow." I hesitated, then focused back on the echo. Slowly, tentatively, I allowed the wave of grief to wash over me. And just as Lyra said, beneath the pain was something else, a texture, a rhythm, a memory not of events but of the soul. A flicker of an image crossed my mind. A moonlit beach, a sense of longing, and a lingering scent of salt water and jasmine. It faded as quickly as it came, but it was enough. It was a lead. A spark had ignited inside me. a mixture of excitement and creeping dread. This wasn't just about Thorn and his credits anymore. Suddenly, there was a slim chance that I could find more than someone else's misery. I could find a thread that might lead me back to myself. "Lyra," I said, my voice rough. "Can these echoes show me my own memories?" Her violet eyes widened slightly, then a calculating look clouded her features. "Perhaps," she answered cautiously, "but it's dangerous. Your mind, it's empty for a reason. Poking around could dredge up things you're not ready for." Her words echoed a fear I'd buried deep down. What if my past was a darkness I was better off not knowing? What if remembering was worse than the emptiness? But the pull was already too strong, a whisper of hope that drowned out the fear. "I have to try," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Lyra studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. But be warned, your mind is an untamed beast. There's no telling what it might unleash." The ritual, as Lyra called it, was unsettling. She required something personal from me, so I gave her a locket I carried, not knowing why I always carried it. I lay on the cracked fountain basin, her small hand pressing the locket against my forehead. The echoes swirled around me, but I reached into them this time, hunting for a familiar resonance, a fragment of myself. It felt like diving blind into a storm-tossed sea. Fear, fury, and shame crashed over me, potent yet utterly foreign emotions. I choked back a cry, fighting the urge to recoil. Just when the onslaught felt unbearable, a flicker of warmth pierced the darkness. A child's laughter, the smell of flowers, then warm earth, a woman's soft voice, a melody both comforting and achingly sad. It was gone as quickly as it came, but left a lingering sweetness that was distinctly mine. And then, the locket's owner, her face came into view. She was so beautiful and familiar. I gasped, my eyes flying open. Lyra knelt beside me, her face a mask of concern. "Did you see it? Something of yourself?" she asked. "Yes," I croaked, still grappling with the remnants of the memory. They were just fragments, but they were mine. A flicker of surprise, maybe even unease, crossed Lyra's face, but then she nodded. "There's more where those came from. Your past is locked away, but we'll find the key." The "we" sent a jolt through me. My deal with Lyra had always felt transactional. Now it felt like a dangerous pact, but one that crackled with possibility. I, the ghost, the Null, might finally break the chains of my oblivion. But at what cost? And was I truly ready for the secrets my mind might reveal? Lyra handed me the locket. "At least you have something to give to your boss," she said, as I placed the memory-infused trinket in my pocket. Thorn's grimy storefront loomed over me like a bad omen. The joy of my discovery warred with the familiar knot of dread in my stomach. The memory fragments, sweet as they were worthless to him. Yet a recklessness I couldn't fully explain urged me forward. I needed Lyra and whatever strange power she held over the echoes. The shop's bell chimed as I stepped inside, and Thorn slithered into view, a shadow masquerading as a man, his sharp eyes fixed on me, and that snake-like grin stretched across his face. "So, my little Null," he purred. "Did you find my prize?" I hesitated, then dug into my pocket. I begrudgingly pulled the small tarnished locket. It was nothing remarkable, but it would have to do. I was able to extract a decent memory from an apparent overdose. "It's infused on this locket I found on a body," I lied, extending the trinket. Maybe it holds something worthwhile. Thorn snatched it with surprising speed. He flipped it open and scanned it with a memory detector, a grin replacing his frown as he eyed me over. Interesting, he whispered to himself. Thorn eyed me for an uncomfortable amount of time before he spoke again. It seems the thugs I paid to track down a simple target were unsuccessful thanks to the unexpected intervention of a Null with a knife. They mentioned she had an interesting skill which sent them reeling. Care to elaborate? I stood there in complete shock. Had those fools actually been working for Thorn? I want her tracked down, he rasped, returning the locket. Whoever she is, someone will pay top credit for her abilities. His words hit me hard. Somehow he knew, but I couldn't give him more info willingly. Thorn, about the woman. Leave her to me, he cut me off, his glare silencing any objection. It was useless. He wouldn't care unless there was profit in it. The emptiness in my chest deepened when I realized that Thorn was not the only predator in Haven, and I had inadvertently placed a target on Lyra's back. As I left the shop, the night air was laced with tension. It wasn't just Thorn I had to worry about. My conversation with Lyra had been hushed, but perhaps not quiet enough. We were playing a dangerous game with rules I didn't understand. And in Haven, if something had value, someone ruthless would hunt for it. Lyra was waiting for me at our designated meeting spot, a shadowed corner tucked away from prying eyes. Someone's looking for you, I blurted out when I saw her. Her face tightened. I know. I felt them earlier. Eyes in the crowd, whispers on the wind. Who? Why? I demanded. She hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. Some collect memories just like Thorn, but for different reasons. They call themselves the archivists. They believe memory holds power, not just over individuals, but over the city itself. Her eyes shimmered with an intensity that made me shiver. They think I'm the key to something important. So what do we do? The question hung heavy between us. We were pawns caught in a game we barely understood, and the stakes were rising with terrifying speed. A chill ran down my spine, not from the night air, but from the terrifying notion that someone even more powerful than Thorn had their sights set on us. It seemed my life was cursed with a never-ending supply of predators. Lyra, I said, my voice tight. Can we even hide? These archivists sound like they can find anyone, anything. They're powerful, she admitted, but they're not omniscient. Yet. A flash of defiance sparked in her eyes. If we're going to have a chance, we need to play this smarter, not just harder. What do you mean? We barely even know the rules of this game they're playing, I argued, the frustration gnawing at me. Lyra tilted her head, studying me as if calculating something. You underestimate yourself. You might be a Null, erased, but that also makes you unpredictable. A wild card. There's value in that. I couldn't help but scoff. Value in being a ghost? It was a cruel joke. She seemed to read my thoughts and a hint of a smile played on her lips. Think about it. Thorn and these archivists thrive on patterns and knowing how their victims operate. And how does one prepare for a void, for the truly unknown? Her words were a splash of cold water, forcing me to see things through a new lens. Perhaps my emptiness wasn't just a curse, but an unexpected advantage. There's something else we need to discuss, Lyra continued, her voice taking on a serious edge. The locket, the echo you felt. It belongs to someone significant in your past, I'm sure of it. But finding her may be the key to uncovering your own memories. My heart hammered against my ribs. The hope tangled with terror, a volatile mix that shook my hands. You're asking me to go from a pawn to a target, I said bitterly. They'll be hunting her, which places me right in the storm's center. You always were in the storm, Lyra countered. This way, perhaps you can finally learn its name. Her words were a hard truth. I'd been adrift in Haven, dodging blows without understanding their purpose. But this was a chance to fight back, to give purpose to the pain. With a deep breath, I made my choice. All right, we find her, but we do it my way, off the grid, unpredictable. Lyra's smile now held a hint of genuine respect. A Null learning to play their own hand. This just grew a whole lot more interesting. The plan was risky, foolhardy even. It relied on luck, cunning, and the hope that I could be more than just a walking bruise for once. Leaving behind the predictability of Thorn's world felt like a strange liberation. Yet, the scent of danger clung to the air as we delved into Haven's underbelly. Black markets, whispered rumours, faces shrouded in shadow. Could I trust Lyra? She had her own secrets and agenda woven into all of this, but right now, our paths were intertwined, and Haven had taught me one harsh truth. Survival often meant relying on the unreliable.